welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. On today's episode, we're just going to talk about the current state of the Pokemon market. Are we starting to see prices drop? Are we starting to see prices go up? What about modern product? Are we starting to see modern product on the shelves? And I'll tell you right now, I'm very surprised at how resilient the Pokemon market has been. I would have expected to see a little bit more product on the shelves, especially with like Pokemon printing to max capacity and all this stuff that we were hoping to see. And if they are doing it, it's scary because we're still seeing store shelves continue to be pretty empty. Give you a real quick story this morning. First thing in this morning at 7 a.m., I was at Walmart when the doors open. They didn't have product on the shelves. I was hoping I could catch the Friday restock. No luck. I went back at lunchtime. There was one single Battle Styles blister left on the shelves. That means at some point between 7 and 12, they had a restock, and it got completely wiped out. I am shocked that the Pokemon market is still this hot when it comes to sealed product. Now, I do know that Walmart has been getting a pretty decent amount of ETBs, whether it's Shining Fates or Hidden Fates. So maybe that's why we're seeing a lot of people like really go after Walmart. So maybe that's why Walmart got wiped out so fast. But like I said, it's just pretty shocking to see because, you know, in an older video of mine, I had mentioned that I expected Battle Styles to be the first set in a while that we're going to start to see a little bit on the shelves. But we're not even seeing product last on the shelves for 24 hours, which is pretty crazy. And even the hype that comes with a lot of these specialty sets, like we saw Walmart had their mystery packs again. Not Walmart, Walgreens. Walgreens had their mystery packs. I went to 2 different Walgreens looking for those mystery packs the day they came out, and the shelves were already empty. And they were limiting to 2 per customer. So that means there must have been a flood of people went there before me on the day of release. So I am a little surprised to still see, you know, this strong demand. And I was hoping that the market would have at least cooled off enough where the scalpers weren't able to go in and clear out shelves. Not really what we're seeing. So that could only mean that the collectors and the investors are the ones picking up the product. Because if the scalpers are coming in and there's not a lot of profit to be made on a lot of these like single check lane blisters and single blister packs, sure, maybe they're focusing on ETBs because there is a decent amount of profit still to be made on that kind of stuff. But if we're still seeing the shelves be bare from everything, even the products that don't have extremely high resale value, that just means that a lot of the collectors and investors are eating it up. And I'm very surprised at how strong the pre-orders have been for Chillin' Reigns, which gives me tons of hope for the future, at least from a demand perspective. As soon as the very few websites that allowed pre-orders for Chillin' Reigns went up, whether it was ETBs or booster boxes, you know, the website that obviously comes to mind really quick is GameStop. They had a pretty decent sized pre-order for ETBs and single pack blisters. The ETBs sold out in almost an hour, which is kind of sad because it was an online exclusive only. I personally missed it. I only was able to pick up the single packs, but I've talked to a few GameStop stores and it sounds like they were pretty upset about it too because it is taking a little bit of the business away from the stores by keeping these pre-orders as online exclusives. Also, you know, when you do online exclusive pre-orders, you allow bots to come in and eat up a lot of these pre-orders, where if it's an in-store pre-order at GameStop, somebody at least has to physically go to the store to put in those pre-orders. So I am a little anti what GameStop did. I think they potentially hurt a lot of, you know, the true collectors and investors, at least the people willing to go to GameStop and put in the pre-order themselves. I think they hurt a lot of those guys, which I think that's a little bit of a shame. And I think that's the opposite of what GameStop was trying to do. I think they were trying to limit the amount of pre-orders that people were doing, but in fact, they just gave all the pre-orders to a very small select group of people. But that's a little bit of a tangent. But like I said, with the pre-orders these websites have done, the ones especially that did booster boxes and stuff, these booster boxes, the demand for them was huge, potentially the largest pre-order demand I can remember in this hobby. You know, it far surpasses Battle Styles, which was previously, I thought was the greatest amount of demand for pre-orders. Battle Styles Chill and Reigns just blew that out of the water. So that means that the demand is still there. And sure, we can see like a price retrace in vintage, and that's to be expected. And huge compliments to Z&G from Z&G Emporium, because he was able to pull a lot of these numbers, which I'm using for this video. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really put much effort into these numbers, so, big shout out to him for pulling these. But he showed like a retraction of sealed product. So far, he's released 3 videos. He did base set, Jungle First Edition, and Fossil First Edition. And we have seen like a pretty decent retraction on, sealed booster box prices, a 31% retraction on base set, a 41% retraction on Jungle, and a 15% retraction on Fossil First Edition. Now, something very important to keep in mind when it comes to these sets, in my opinion, were extremely overvalued for where they should have been and how quickly the prices for these, creeped up. I was expecting a retraction. I think some of these retractions are a little bit bigger than I was expecting to see in like a month's time. Like that 41% makes me a little nervous. But where I'm feeling pretty confident, which was the area where I thought the retraction was going to be the largest, was in the PSA graded, PSA 10s. With the exception of base set, which saw the biggest loss of price in PSA 10s, which was like 43% across the board. We saw Jungle lose 16% for PSA 10s, and Fossil First Edition losing 15% for PSA 10s too. I thought these numbers were going to be a lot higher. And the main reason for that is I thought we are going to see a ton of returns come back from PSA and CGC and flood the market. So to only see like a 15% retraction is not nearly as bad as I thought, because you got to keep something very important in mind. The run-up to get to this 15% retraction is still absolutely, bananas from where it was in early 2020. So the prices we're at today are still way higher. I'm still seeing a lot of the indicators of new collectors coming into the hobby. The number one big indicator that just instantly comes to mind is I'm seeing a lot of, like eBay auctions where cards are in very poor condition, selling for still very high dollar amounts for the raw copies, when the cards have very clear printing issues or whitening or chipping around the back, things that are very obvious where you can tell there's huge deductions in the grade. But we're still seeing those cards sell for a premium. So in my experience, yes, that is indicative of new collectors who are normally not super familiar with the grading process. So they're pricing a lot of these, call them low grade cards, at higher grading prices. And if that's a market you're really into, where you want like a relatively near mint card, but you want to pay less in grading fees, you really need to start looking at like maybe the 6s and 7s and just cracking the slabs yourselves. If that's what you're looking for, you're just looking for binder set cards, you can get a lot of near mint cards for way cheaper than I'm seeing a lot of these auctions go for. So it is a little questioning of why I'm seeing this if it's not new collectors. And we're also seeing a relatively strong secondary market, which for modern product, which again is usually indicative of new collectors, because new collectors will come in and want to pick up a lot of modern product on secondary market. They're more willing normally to pay over MSRP because maybe they don't have the same channels that you and I do to search for modern product, or they don't really understand that. Yes, while modern product is very scarce, it is very hard to find on the shelves. It's definitely not impossible. If you have enough patience, eventually, you'll probably get lucky if you are still grinding at this. So to see that high secondary market for modern, in my experience, is just usually indicative of new collectors. So while it's a bad thing that these new collectors are more or less getting burned on a lot of their purchases, hopefully they're learning from these mistakes. But like I said, when you see new collectors still funneling into the hobby, in the long run, that's going to be good. Sure, are we going to see some newer collectors drop off? Yeah, of course. I think that will happen with any hobby. But eventually, you'll see enough of them stick with the hobby, which will have great long-term effects for the hobby. And I think currently, we're still seeing that. I think the big thing Pokemon has going for it and always has going for it is that the entry point for new collectors is still so low. Especially think about just a modern booster box. You can pick it up between 90 and 125 bucks. That's still relatively low entry for 36 packs of cards. Opening 36 packs of cards for around $100 is still a lot of excitement. You'll probably get a couple decent pulls out of one booster box. Like I said, that entry point is so low. Sure, we've seen maybe the entry point to go back and collect more vintage stuff is still high, but there's also still good deals out there. We're seeing the prices of cards drop a little bit, which could be more, could incentivize these newer collectors to go back into vintage. But at the same time, within the vintage market, there are so many niches and so many different sets that the entry points for a lot of cards, especially the ones that are undervalued, there's still tons of opportunity out there for people. And, that's one of the good things about Pokemon is that you can continue to grow in this hobby. I've said it in other videos. It would take multiple lifetimes to memorize and understand every single card and every single set and know them. There's 30,000+ different English cards. Like, there's so much to understand and learn that you can constantly grow and find new areas. And like I said, if it is a price point issue for you, yeah, maybe it is hard to go back and start collecting PSA 10 Charizard first edition. Sure, maybe that price point has gone past you, but there's still a lot of cards, I call it under the $500 mark, that are still very desirable cards, especially when you're going to start looking at raw versions of cards and going through the grading process yourself and continuing to grow. The entry point for all this stuff is so low that I think that's really what's going to help Pokemon out in the long term. Given enough time, will we see price increases for all these what I consider undervalued products? Yeah, sure. But as of right now, the entry points again are so low. It has long term, huge potential growth. And I think that's great for the hobby in general. And I think that's one of the reasons we're going to see Pokemon continue to grow. Like I said earlier in the video, sure, you will see price retraces a little bit, but in the long run, I think a lot of these new prices, with the exception of a couple, are probably here to stay for the long term. No one's ever able to predict the future of this hobby 100%. Sure, you can go back and look at previous trends in the hobby, look at the past, but even that's impossible to really get a true picture. At the end of the day, it's still a lot of guessing. It's just a lot of feeling, a lot of, going with your gut type stuff when it comes to this hobby. As always, don't ever make decisions in this hobby that you think are wrong. Go with your gut. If you think it's a wrong decision, it probably is. Always be mindful of retractions and stuff like this. Continue to do your due diligence. But other than that, guys, listen. If you somehow made it this far in this video and you're still not subscribed to this channel, hit that subscribe button. Other than that, hit the like button. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think the current state of the Pokemon market is? Do you still think we're going in an uptrend, especially when it comes to pre-orders for modern stuff? Is the price retraction of vintages that worry you guys at all? But other than that, I'll catch you guys on the next video.